we need to discuss the integrity of the election. And I need to rewind to 2020 because I pointed out something that was happening about a Chinese person voting in Michigan, and a Trump supporter replied, "But you said you don't believe in voter fraud." No, I never said that. In fact, I've said repeatedly I do believe in voter fraud. I just don't believe 2020 was stolen. I think the Democrats stole it fair and square. They cheated in a way that's perfectly allowable. They ballot harvested. You know, if someone harvests ballots, the person who harvests the ballots goes to jail, but the votes are still legally binding votes. There's nothing wrong with the vote. It's the person who collected all the ballots. A lot of the claims from 2020 are based on people's ignorance of the law, and they trusted people. For example, the whole Fulton County State Farm Arena stuff, a lot of people were lied to and they believed the lie. And that's part of the problem here is a lot of the claims being made now about this election are being made by the same liars that people believed in 2020. And by the way, they are liars. They are lying to you, in some cases willfully, in some cases maliciously, and you don't know. You're not an election expert. You're trusting these people and you're being lied to. And the number of people who call me and say, well, what about this? 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 Some of them were bad. Some of them were good. But here's what you have to understand. The bottom line, every single election in the United States of America has fraud. Every single election in the United States of America has problems. Every single election in the United States of America has errors. Every single election in the United States has problems. The question is, are they enough to throw out the election? And there is a mathematical formula you have to use based on how many people voted in a race plus how many people voted but refused to vote in the race. And no claims from 2020 were able to overcome that, including in front of judges who were Trump-appointed judges. I'm not saying bad things didn't happen. What I'm saying is there weren't enough to overturn the election. And what we have now is a standard from some people that one problem, one person voting who should not be able to vote, is enough to throw out an election. That's not true. It's never been true. And if you think that, you are a stupid person because you don't understand the way the world works. You don't understand the way elections work. All of that being said, we are also at a point where the Democrats, after all the lamenting about 2020, should be producing very good elections. Let's compare and contrast. In the state of Georgia, a state Republicans who support Trump claim was stolen. The Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who they say was complicit, got reelected. Brian Kemp, who they say was complicit, got reelected. You know what they did? They passed a comprehensive overhaul of the way elections work in Georgia, including new voter monitoring procedures so that counties like Fulton County and Atlanta, if they get behind in their vote counting, they can be, the Board of Elections can be overruled. New people can be put in place quickly. And guess what? In the primary election in Georgia, they actually worked very competently to have a primary election in Fulton County. It was the first time in decades. First time, put it to you this way, I've been in Georgia since 1993. It was the first time since I've been in the state of Georgia that Fulton County had all of its votes counted that night. The Secretary of State of Georgia is now pointing out, as he did yesterday on this program, that we should know by midnight on election night who won Georgia, that 70% of the vote will be cast early. All those votes will be processed by around 8 p.m. on election night, and that'll be day of election voting that will be counted between 8 p.m. and midnight. The absentee ballots will be processed, not after the polls close, but before the polls close. They'll be approved and then voted on. That's a major, major change, and it was designed to help instill trust from people who were so lied to and believed the lies that they can't trust anything, and the state of Georgia worked very hard to fix it. But in Michigan, they've allowed a Chinese citizen to vote. A University of Michigan student from China who is not a U.S. citizen voted Sunday in Ann Arbor and is being charged with 2 crimes. But here's the problem in Michigan. They put his vote into the vote pool. It can't be, once a vote goes into the vote pool, it's anonymous. You can't extract his vote now. You don't know how, you don't know which vote is his. So his vote's in the vote pool. Now, the odds of the state of Michigan election being decided by one vote is pretty improbable. Not impossible, but improbable. But this now seeds doubt. Well, if this guy did it, maybe someone else did it. In the state of Michigan, Republicans are circulating lies that the Dominion voting system machines are not allowing people to vote for Donald Trump. What actually happened was a software error in the way machines for handicapped voters were set up. These are very specific machines. And in a couple of precincts where they set them up, if you choose to vote by party, you can't then go in and change individual votes. Now, what do I mean by that? In some states, my state doesn't do this, but in some states, you can say, I vote Democrat or I vote Republican, and you pick party. And when you pick party, it shifts every vote on the ballot to the Democrat or every vote on the ballot to a Republican, depending on which party you shift. In some states, like Michigan, you can vote by party, but then can go down the ballot and say, but I like this guy in the other party, so I'm voting for him. And so your ballot will count all the Democrats if you voted Democrat, but then you want this one Republican, they'll count it. The way these machines were set up, and we're talking a couple dozen machines total, where if you decided to vote by party, you could not then go pick an individual candidate of the other party. It was fixed. People's votes were not undermined. It was found and it was fixed. But Republicans have circulated this. The machines are rigged in Michigan. It's not true. It was based on something that happened. But the lie was the lie, and it spread. In Georgia and Whitfield County, a woman, user error. She meant to vote for Donald Trump, it seems. She actually touched Joe Biden's name. When her ballot was printed, she saw it, and the rumor started circulating, oh, my God, the machines in Whitfield County, if you vote for Donald Trump, they're casting the ballot for Joe Biden. No, it was one person, user error. They're more likely than not. They haven't been able to replicate it, including on that machine. They gave her a new ballot. They discarded that ballot. Everything was fine, but people were whipped into frenzy. I saw one idiot on social media when Brian Kemp was at the Texas-Georgia game the other week and say, Brian Kemp, why aren't you in Georgia fixing this? Dominion machines, they're stealing the vote in Whitfield County. No, you idiot. It was one person who touched Joe Biden's name, as best we can tell, thought she had touched Donald Trump's name. They gave her a new ballot. Everything was fine. Nothing happened. Everybody's already ceding ground because they don't care about the truth. They care about their team. The refs are to blame. The machines are to blame if your side loses. This is very dangerous territory. And this gets me to the media, where the American press corps could play a role in accuracy. But they're so invested in playing the partisan game, it seeds further distrust. This is Mika Brzezinski and David Ehrenberg, a lawyer in Palm Beach, Florida, having this discussion this morning. Just listen.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has ruled to allow Republican officials in Virginia to move forward with a plan to purge 1,600 names from the state's voter rolls ahead of the election. However, since Virginia offers same-day registration, any eligible voter removed from the rolls should still be able to vote on Election Day or during the early voting period. Let's bring in State Attorney for Palm Beach.
Pause. Do you know what Mika Brzezinski did not tell you in that, or tell MSNBC's listeners who are going to be whipped into frenzy, just as some Trump voters will, by the lies being told on the right, lies being told on the left here on MSNBC? That ruling from the Supreme Court only applied to non-citizens who actively checked on the voter registration form that they are not citizens. 1,600 people in Virginia registered to vote and checked a box saying they are not U.S. citizens. Virginia sought to remove them from the ballot. Now, the plain language of federal law says you're not allowed to do that, and two courts said, sorry, Virginia. The only exceptions are for felons and for dead people. The state of Virginia went to the Supreme Court and argued, hey, these people aren't allowed to register to vote anyway, so we should be able to remove them. And the Supreme Court agreed. You did not hear that from Mika Brzezinski just now. You did not hear that. Now listen to the lawyer.
Florida, Dave Ehrenberg, he's been looking at this. What do you make of the Supreme Court's decision here?
Good to be with you, Mika. So first off, it's already a federal crime for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. And despite Donald Trump's claims, there's no credible evidence that non-citizen voting is a problem. Studies show that these are rare occurrences and they have had no impact on the outcome of elections.
Wait. Let's just stop and see this. This story comes after the Detroit News reports on a Chinese citizen at University of Michigan cast a vote, and it got into the voter pool. Swell, it's not a big deal. It's not. Okay, look, I agree. One person voting in a race that's going to be decided by 10, 15, 25, 30,000 people. No, it's not going to affect the outcome of the election, but it should not have been able to happen. But it was able to happen because of same-day voter registration, and the Democrats don't want to fix that. The Democrats want to be able to allow ballots to come in 5 days after an election and still count them. In Colorado, a Colorado elections official sent out an email that contained an Excel file that had the passwords for all the voting machines. Why aren't the members of the press who are so upset about Republicans questioning the election willing to hold Democratic officials accountable to for the absurdity of their rules? On MSNBC this morning, they did an entire segment trying to dance around the fact that the Supreme Court decision in Virginia specifically applied to people who affirmatively said, we're not citizens of the United States and we'd like to vote. When the lawyer came on to talk, he specifically dismissed the idea that non-citizens vote in the election the day after it was reported a non-citizen voted in Michigan. And he says later in this segment, and if you do, you're going to get punished. It's a crime. So this kid in Michigan is now he's been arrested and going to be charged with the crime. But his vote is still in the voter pool. This is a both sides situation, and some of you don't like it. There are Republicans out there who are lying right now about the voter pool. There's been a story, and thank God Laura Trump came out. I saw this, a bunch of Republicans saying, oh my God, did you hear that they've got one voter ID that's counted for like 20,000 votes in Michigan? And even Laura Trump has come out and said, no, this is an error in the generation of the form. It's not actually true. Don't believe this one. But people were already circulating as proof of fraud. I'm glad she came out and said this isn't true. Both sides are casting doubts on all this stuff. Y'all, we have got to get to a point where our elected officials are really concerned about the integrity of the election. Instead, you have members of the media who are actively deflecting legitimate issues and refusing to cover them, which just causes the liars to be able to amplify the claims. The media plays such a role in what's happening right now. And if you're an MSNBC viewer, if you're an MSNBC producer, you should understand this conversation Mika Brzezinski had this morning willfully plays into the hands of those who want to undermine the election because you people aren't willing to insist on integrity in the elections. You're allowing Democrats to make willful, stupid mistakes and not hold them accountable and not highlight them because you're so scared of playing into the hands of the liars as opposed to just telling people the truth. Yes, things happen that should not happen, but let's review them and be honest about them, and the press just doesn't want to do it.